Good morning, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. On today's show, we are talking about the shakeup at the Department of Homeland Security. Kirstjen Nielsen is out. The Israeli elections are on Tuesday, and the N.C.A.A. Women's Basketball Championship and Men's, by the way, are both set as well. All right, we got a great show for you today. A lot of fun stuff to talk about. So let's do it. Here in the last week of the wake up for the spring season. Yeah, pretty amazing. We come very, very far since January. So Kirstjen Nielsen is finally leaving the Trump administration, a casualty of endless border wars that seem to have really been destined to continue through the 2020 election. And with the ouster last week of Trump's nominee to run ICE, it looks like Trump isn't right now intending to push even tougher rhetoric on immigration. So the embattled Secretary of Homeland Security was attending a Sunday evening meeting with the president where she was forced to step down, according to two senior administration officials, telling the Washington Post. Nick Miroff, Josh Dawsey, and Soman Kim, as well as Maria Sacchetti. Nielsen entered the meeting with no intention of quitting. The announcement of her departure came shortly after the meeting via Trump's Twitter feed. Paula Reed and Major Garrett of CBS News first told everyone about Nielsen's resignation, saying, quote, "I've determined that it's the right time for me to step aside. I hope that the next secretary will have the support of Congress and the courts in fixing the laws which have impeded our ability to serve America's borders and which have contributed to discord in our nation's discourse. This makes Nielsen the 8th cabinet secretary under Trump to resign under pressure." This is a very, very, very common situation where people give the opportunity to pretty much resign, but we're not sure if they're resigned or fired, and we never really find out, but we just kind of assume that they were fired. Some of these names include, you may remember them, Tom Price, Rex Tillerson, Dave Shulkin, Scott Pruitt, Jeff Sessions, Ryan Zinke, and Jim Mattis. So, yeah, Nielsen, who was confirmed in December 2017, leaves the administration as Trump's anger intensifies over the surge of migrants trying to cross the border, with unauthorized crossings the highest levels at a decade right now. Her fate has been repeatedly questioned over the course of her 16-month tenure, as she has really been privately and repeatedly berated by Trump for failing to fix the problem. She has succeeded in holding her job, defying numerous reports that Trump decided to fire her, but has done so by becoming the public face of controversial policies that haven't worked as planned, and in some cases even backfired, obviously, that we know. So it really is kind of amazing, if you think about it, how she's been able to keep her job through A, Trump's anger, B, incredibly bad policies. She's probably been responsible for defending and pretty much the public face of one of Trump's and the Trump administration's most vile policies yet, which is the separation of families at the border policy that absolutely everyone was kind of just disgusted by. And it really is kind of amazing how she's been able to weather that storm. So she's definitely a survivor. We talked about this last night on Newsflash. She's been a careerist, I think, for a very long time. That's just who she is. And we have seen that happen again and again, as apparently she's had to suffer for it from the president, as he's berated Nielsen regularly, calling her at home early in the mornings. Again, this is from Maggie Haberman and Michael Shea that we talked about last night, calling her at home early in the mornings to demand she take action to stop migrants from entering the country, including doing things that were clearly illegal, like blocking all migrants from seeking asylum. So yeah, I was like, he was like, yeah, do more. She's like, yeah, I'd love to, but there are kind of things like laws in the way. But that's what she said in response to Trump, and those responses apparently only infuriated Trump further. So the reality is that immigration experts say that Trump's own immigration policies have caused so much chaos along the border that they may have been encouraging illegal crossings. So that's pretty much what's going on right now, which is a little crazy to think about. So that is probably the craziest situation. So the fear over family separation last summer helped to highlight the fact that families won't be detained for long in the U.S. if they're detained at all, and metering, which people are asked to return to a busy port of entry on another day to seek asylum, may have encouraged asylum seekers to cross illegally. So yeah, that's pretty much how it's happened. and his policy of just chaos and not having anything straight. Like, she's also the thing that you have to forget, you can't forget, is she managed everything pretty much so incompetently. She lost the information of thousands of families, along with she lost Homeland Security, DHS, Customs and Border Patrol. Like, they all lost an incredible amount of information. They caused years and years of psychological and just traumatic damage to the minds of little children, parents, families. That's going to be very, very hard to assess in the years to come, just because how deep and bad they've just really cut the lives of those families, some of which may not even be reunited still, which is incredible. So, yeah, Trump, who campaigned on a promise to secure the border, has virtually thrown every option his aides have been able to think of at the problem to little or no avail, according to the Associated Press. A great way of looking at it there, from Jill Colvin and Colleen Long. The face of family separation is Christian Nielsen as well. So that's pretty incredible. She was able to survive, but then she still refuses to say that it even existed, saying, quote, "This administration did not create a policy of separating families at the border." She falsely claimed to White House reporters during a briefing last June. She tweeted at the time, "We don't have a policy of separating families at the border, period." We all know that. Some of the most intense outrage at the measures has followed instances of parents deported to Central America without their children or spending weeks unable to locate their sons and daughters. In other instances, pediatricians and child advocates have reported seeing toddlers crying inconsolably for their mothers at shelters where staff are prohibited from physically comforting them. Will not apologize for the job we do, Nielsen said at a gathering of law enforcement officers. All right, that's great. Like, I mean, it's probably like the average grunt in there. Like, it's hard to really tell if they really enjoy what they're doing. But like Nielsen, she's just done such a bad job. Like, not only has she helped create this policy, she managed it so incompetently that she pretty much lost all the families. When they were supposed to be deported, they were supposed to be put back together. She lost them. Like, that's unforgivable. What she was able to do and what she did to these families, it's on a whole other level. It's one of the most, definitely, hands down, probably the most vile thing the Trump administration has done yet. We still got some time left until 2020. So it could take up for 2 years for the government to identify potentially thousands of additional families. Here's the writing on the wall. The last week, Trump abruptly withdrew his nominee, Ronald Vitiello, to run ICE, saying that he wants someone tougher to lead the agency. As 6 administration officials, this again according to the Washington Post, said Friday, the decision to jettison Vitiello was a sign of expanding influence that Stephen Miller now wields over immigration matters in the White House, particularly as Trump lashes out at Mexico and Central American nations, as well as Homeland Security officials and aides who have expressed doubts about the legality of his ideas. Yeah, like, who cares if they're legal? I'm going to do them anyway. Like, that's pretty scary. So an empowered Stephen Miller is also eyeing the removal of Lee Francis Cisna, the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, who run the legal immigration system. So pretty much the thing is, things are going to get tougher. And I said this last night, like, the key message here is that things for migrant families are going to get even tougher. It's going to get worse, folks. It's just that simple. All right, so Customs and Border Patrol Protection Commissioner Kevin McAleenan will serve as the acting DHS Secretary. Those in consideration to permanently replace Nielsen include Ken Cuccinelli, Rick Perry, and Chris Kobach, that we heard James Stanley mention last night. It's pretty immigration hardliner, voting rights guy. None of those people are very, very good. So, interesting here. Good thing for Nielsen, or bad thing for Nielsen, good thing for us. Immigration and civil rights groups are urging companies not to hire Trump administration officials who are involved in the planning, carrying out, or defending of the separation of migrant children from their families. A letter signed by the 41 groups were released on Friday and will be sent to all of the CEOs of all the Fortune 500 companies. They should not be allowed to seek refuge in your boardrooms or corner offices, according to the open letter. Allowing them to step off the revolving door and into your welcoming arms should be a non-starter. So that is what's going on there with Christian Nielsen, who has resigned today. But We now turn our attention to the West Bank, where fighting for survival before parliamentary elections, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and this is huge, unexpectedly promised over the weekend to begin extending sovereignty over the West Bank if he is reelected. So this is probably the most far-right Israel you can go, taking over Israel's sovereign land, kicking out somebody else, which is pretty much what Israel has been saying that Gaza, laughably in fact, people think Gaza's going to do to them. It's really ridiculous. It's like Gaza's going to kick us out. Palestine's going to kick us out. The West Bank is going to encroach on our territory. Oh wait, we're doing the same thing. Like, so yeah, this takes away the right to be like, oh, Gaza's going to do it to us. No. They like have no power, and you made sure of that. Yeah. So the West Bank is home to 2.6 million Palestinians who view the area as possible site for a future Palestinian state. Netanyahu's major rival, the former army chief Benny Gantz, and analysts dismissed the plan as a last-ditch effort to rally Netanyahu's right-wing base. Netanyahu is one of Israel's largest-serving heads of state, but he's facing, again, for those of you who don't know, just quickly here about the election. He's been in power for a very long time. Netanyahu has of Israel. The left of Israel has been pretty much battered down and is irrelevant, so Gantz is even pretty far right. But his challenger is Gantz. He's one of the leaders of the centrist alliance, and their voting will take place tomorrow. So, all right. Antibiotics, which have been credited with saving tens of millions of lives, has never been more accessible to the poor, thanks largely to the mass production of generics in China and India. Across much of the world, a few dollars will buy drugs like amoxicillin, which treats a broad range of infections. But the increasingly available drugs are losing their ability to kill the germs they were designed to cure. Poverty is a huge and largely unappreciated driver of antibiotic resistance, often viewed as a problem in rich countries. Saying, a researcher in Kenya said, "We are, quote, running out of treatment options. If we don't get a handle on the problem, I fear for the future." So it's definitely something to watch there. And incredibly scary to think about. People, antibiotics, things that we've been relying on for decades now, have been, to cure all types of infections, have been pretty much all phasing out, which is incredibly disturbing. So hopefully we get a handle on that problem, as the Kenyan researcher said. Reporting there, of course, from the New York Times and Washington Post today thus far. More for Nielsen was about the Washington Post, but for the West Bank and the drug story, it was about it was from the New York Times. So yeah, anyway, but just another angle on this: a fungus called Candida auris preys on people with weakened immune systems, and it's quickly spreading across the globe. It's frightening a new dimension. It adds a frightening new dimension to the threat posed by the overuse of antibiotics, and which is being used incredibly highly for pretty much everything at this point, which is disturbing and really developing world health problem. So yeah, Jake Orda lives 3 blocks from Mark Zuckerberg's $10 million home in San Francisco. A military veteran now lives in government-subsidized housing. Orda is part of an underground economy that's developing, which is scavenging through other people's trash. He sells what he retrieves around town and says his goal is to earn $30 to $40 a day. And it really offers some of the extremes of American capitalism, that's for sure. Saying, quote, "You've got more and more tech people here. The city is moving faster and faster. These people have short attention spans. Some discard items that ought to be repurposed." So yeah, completely normal country there, guys. That's all I got to say about that story. Jesus. Yeah. So yeah, let's see what else is going on here for our quick hits segment. In the battle in Libya, the U.S. military evacuated its smallest contingent of troops from the Libyan capital of Tripoli as rival militias fought to stop an inspiring strongman from taking control of the city. Britain has proposed sweeping government powers to fight the spread of online and violent extremist content, false information, and harmful material aimed at children. The plan announced today would be probably one of the most aggressive ever to rein in corrosive online content. After California's governor issued a moratorium on executions, Democratic presidential candidates have embraced abolition. About time. It represents a generational shift for the party, but follows a decades-long trend in declining public support for capital punishment. Like, people viewed it as, again, just kind of bad and ineffective and overly cruel. So yeah, Baylor went